Welcome to People Who Inspire. I'm your host, Mary Drelizak. There isn't anyone, it seems, that isn't impacted by the opioid crisis. It affects all of us as it tears apart families and communities. What can you do if you're dealing with an addiction or have a family member who is? The Connellsville Catholic churches have responded to the call to support those in need. My guests today are Father Bob Lubic, pastor of the Connellsville Catholic Churches, St. John, St. Rita's, and Immaculate Conception, and Mary Sampey, Director of Evangelization for the Connellsville Catholic Churches. Father Bob, you're passionate about this subject. Can you tell us why?
Well, unfortunately, I have just seen too much of it, and actually my time here today is cut short. I'm going to bury in Dunbar the uncle of a young man who died last year, a Geibel grad, who died from an overdose, and a friend of his, another classmate of his, died less than a year later. We've had a lot of Geibel or Con area graduates over the years, a lot of members of our community here that have been struggling with it. There have been ones that I've prayed with over the years that have come to see me to talk about their struggles and have since passed away. And it's been an issue in previous parishes as well. Over a decade ago when I was in Penn Township, Harrison City, it was really big there at the time, but at that time it was much more an issue with money, and that was an area with a lot more money. By the time I got to Fayette County, the money aspect had disappeared. It's now a dirt cheap thing, and it's affecting an even broader range of people. And just the lives that I've seen thrown away, and the struggle of people over the years who I've buried, people who have said point blank they didn't want this. You know, they made a mistake, but once they made that mistake, they were trapped, and try as they might, they couldn't get away from it. I remember a young man, again from Harrison City, who died some years back, a musician, did the rock star thing, and to the point of dying at the rock star age of 27. And his mother shared with me some of his journals where he had written poignantly about his desire to escape and his inability to do it. And he had a one-year-old daughter, and it was just tragic. And over again, that tragedy keeps getting replayed, and it needs to stop.
Right. It doesn't discriminate.
It does not at all.
And you're left with consoling the family and all those left behind.
Yes. And it drains you.
That's right. That's right.
It drains you.
Sure it does. Mary, it's personal for you. The opioid crisis is. Can you tell us why?
Yes, my family has actually been affected from addiction. My sister, Angela, died of an accidental fentanyl-laced overdose in December of 2016. She was 34 years old. And like Father said, she made a mistake. She chose to use that first time. But after that first time, she couldn't stop. And she really tried, but you know, the cycle of the shame continued, and you know, you hate yourself so much for what you've done, not only to yourself, but to her children and to our family, that just cycle continued of her needing to use. She began opiates because she had an autoimmune disease called lupus. So she began to take prescription pills prescribed to her by a doctor, and she became addicted to them. And no longer could she get her prescription pills. And that's when she turned to heroin. And so when it affected me, it was something that obviously was on my radar, but before it affects you, you really don't see that it could truly happen to anyone. And afterwards, my eyes were open to all the people in our community, and particularly in our parishes, that just were like me, that they felt alone, they felt ashamed, they felt embarrassed. And there was nowhere for them to go, or no one if there was someone to talk to, they were too embarrassed to even talk about it. So it was very isolating for them. And so for me, it kind of became, how can we as a parish respond and let our people know that it's okay and that they're not alone? And it impacts you so much more even after the person has died, because you fear for that phone call every single day. And then when it finally comes, ironically, it's almost like a relief because you don't have to worry about that person anymore. And you know that that person isn't in pain anymore, that they never have to hate themselves again, they never have to use again, and that they can be at peace. But the families are left behind, as well as we're helping to raise our nieces. They live with my mother, and just the entire stigma of that in their lives, and just the day-to-day survival of trying to live without the person as a result of a completely preventative thing. This was a 100% preventable death, that it didn't have to happen. And so it kind of just fueled me to try to find some kind of purpose in all of that for all of the other people affected in our community.
Is there anything else you want people to know?
I think the main thing to know is that we're not here to judge, we're here to help. And I think so many people get weighed down by the stigma and don't want to say anything. And I'm sure you've experienced that, Mary.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, before, when we were still dealing with my sister's active addiction, it was very isolating. We hadn't told many people as a family, and no one knew, and we didn't know who we could go to or who we could trust. And so as someone just sitting in the pew, Father Bob just began to talk about this almost every single week, and it helped me so much, and I was so grateful because it was almost like it was the elephant in the room. So many people had been dealing with this, but we were all afraid to say something. And he made it okay to talk about for us, and to not feel judged, and to feel like I could go to him and talk about the struggles I was dealing with my sister. And, you know, and we're very close, but I mean, imagine just the person in the pew sitting there, and what a gift that is to the people, that now they know that the door has been opened. And at that time, there were very few pastors willing to have that conversation and to put themselves out there. And I think it welcomed so many more people into our doors, that they were going to be welcomed. They weren't going to be judged. They were going to be accepted where they were. And as a result of that, a lot of people message him, message me, reach out to us because they know that it's a safe place for them.
It's great. Father Bob, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, it's my pleasure. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. When we come back, we're going to speak more with Mary Sampey and what the Catholic churches in Connellsville are doing to respond.
Zoom from Armstrong, the area's fastest and most reliable internet, just keeps getting better. We're increasing Zoom 2 speeds to 300 megabits per second. That means more streaming and more downloads for more devices. And with those devices, you're going to need more data. Zoom customers, your monthly data allowance has increased to 1 terabyte and 2 terabytes for Zoom 2 and above. That's double the data. Visit ArmstrongOneWire.com/internet for more details. The future is faster with Zoom.
Welcome back to People Who Inspire. I'm here again with Mary Sampey, Director of Evangelization for the Connellsville Catholic Churches. Mary, last summer, the Diocese of Greensburg and Bishop Edward Milesic held education and prayer sessions throughout the diocese to respond to this. What came from that?
Well, we had already been responding as a community. We were doing some outreach opportunities with some of our community organizations, but when the bishop came, it kind of just gave our people, our parishioners, a reason to kind of just say, I could do something. So he really came, and not only did he pray with us, he empowered us to make choices and to do things that he knew that we were called to do. And so there were a lot of parishioners as a result of that said, we want to do something. And we just thought, okay, we can't lose this momentum. We need to move on this. We need to respond as a faith community. And as a result, there were 2 parishioners that came forward. The first one was someone that had an addiction in their family, and they had been doing Nar-Anon for 12 years in Uniontown. And they said, you know, we should bring this to Connellsville. We can do this every week. And so they began a Nar-Anon group, and it is a group that meets every single Wednesday in the evenings at St. John's. It's open to the public. It's completely free of charge. It's not a religious group. It's a spiritual group. And it is a 12-step program for those who have a family or a friend that is an addict. And the reason that we really wanted to have this is because, speaking personally as someone who had an addiction, I did not have the tools and the resources to know what I should and should not be doing when it comes to my loved one, because I didn't know. and I didn't have any of the support in order to empower me to make those decisions. And what the 12-step program really does is to help the family member learn how to respond to their loved one, what enabling looks like, what manipulation looks like, and what you could do better. And for me, the most important piece is how to reconcile the fact that your loved one isn't who they used to be, and to not blame your loved one, the past person that they were, for their present choices, because at this point they are addicted. And that's something that is very painful for our people to go to deal with. And with that support group, obviously it's anonymous. You know that you're not alone. Every single thing that someone else says in that group, I could relate to. And it helped me so much, to learn about what I could be doing better. However, at that point when we started the group, my sister had already passed. And so we really felt as though those who had someone that had already lost someone due to an addiction really need another group. Because, I do need to recover from that, but I also need to learn how to live without my loved one. And I really, for me, it wasn't helpful to me to go back to that dark place of what went on when she was in active addiction after she passed. I wanted to remember her for who she truly was. So another parishioner came forward, and she has a counseling center here in Connellsville. And she said, I really would love to do counseling for you, and it would be free of charge for anyone that would want to come. And we do it once a month, every first Tuesday of the month, for anyone that has lost someone due to an addiction. And obviously we already have grief support here, but this is just for those who've lost a loved one due to an addiction, because it's just a completely different kind of loss than any other kind, where you can speak freely about your loved one. You're not going to be judged for the nature of their death, because unfortunately there is a stigma of, well, your loved one died from an addiction, so either for some reason I shouldn't be as upset about it, or that they somehow deserved what had happened to them. And this is a safe place for them to share and to learn how to reclaim the person who they truly were. And again, this is not something religious. This is not something that's a cover in order to convert people to the Catholic faith. This is simply a way that we can respond as a community to say that we're here for you and that you're welcome here.
Thank you. And in with other programs that are happening out in the communities, there's collaborations. What are you doing working with other organizations to support those other pieces to this puzzle?
The first really important thing for us was to get to know what was going on in our local community, because we knew the resources were out there, but we didn't have a lot of connections to them. So one of the things that we did was we spoke to people like Highlands Hospital, who they have a phenomenal treatment option, so that when people call here and they want to know what's my next step if I'm in recovery, I can refer people to them. I know who their certified recovery specialists are, and I can tell them the kinds of programs that they have. And so obviously we can't be a treatment center ourselves as a church, but we can point people in the right direction. The other thing that we talked about is that we really need to get involved in a lot of the things that are already going on. So I'm personally involved with Communities That Care. I'm personally involved with circles to help people out of poverty, as well as Fayette Drug and Alcohol, and also the Fayette County Drug Advisory Group, which I'm so thankful that they see the importance of faith-based groups. And the reason that we really feel, obviously I'm not, I'm not a professional, when it comes to addiction. Unfortunately, because of my personal story, that's the only reason why I became educated on it. But I simply want people to know the Connellsville Catholic Community is there for them and that we care. And being involved in groups like this, let the community know that we're taking an active role in people's lives.
Thank you. What do you want people to know? Anyone out there who is struggling, who is dealing with this right now in any way, what do you want them to know?
I think the biggest thing to know is that you're not alone, and that you don't have to be ashamed. Even at our groups that we have, very often we see that the people that are coming to those groups are not our own parishioners. They're people from the outside, from other faith communities, from other cities that drive to come to our groups because they feel as though they're embarrassed to go somewhere where people are going to know them. And, you know, if that's you, obviously everyone there is dealing with the same exact thing that you're dealing with. There's nothing to be embarrassed about, and you need support. It is something that has helped me so much. Obviously, I don't want anyone else to have to go through this, but the fact that I know that I'm not alone, I could speak freely about my loved one in such a way, you know, that I can feel that people really care and want to listen to me when I speak about the loved one that I lost. And for people to have that, you know, I just want them to know, whoever you are, that you could come and that we're going to welcome you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for being with us, Mary.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much to the Connellsville Catholic Churches for serving as a light in the darkness of this opioid crisis. They're giving hope and saving lives in our community. If you would like more information about Nar-Anon or the grief support services that they offer, please call the number on the screen or visit their website to know more. Thanks so much for being with us.